What's up, people? It's Plat Chat time, episode 41.
Looks like you couldn't tell whether you wanted to say it's Bren or Plat Chat, so it just kind of stumbled out.
Yeah, I was about to say something rude, and then I was like, I probably shouldn't say something rude to the people watching. But welcome to Plat Chat, episode 41. This is the upset episode, I suppose.
Yeah,
I mean,
or the recap of the summer showdown episode.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just absolutely absurd.
this is where I
really
cry
transpired.
about my fantasy roster.
It's also Johnny's
roster. How is that the most of your concerns? Like, there's just so many things up in the air.
I was about to say it's Johnny's birthday episode, but now Johnny's been mean, so I don't know.
How am I mean? I'm just emotional. Like, my power ranking segment today took me 2.5 hours.
It is brutal.
2.5 hours.
I think this is the
hours.
hardest, maybe the hardest time to do power rankings because there were so many upsets, and they are still upsets, right? It's not like those teams.
Well, I'll tell you what, the easy way to do it is you just do the standings from the tournament, and then that way
that's wrong.
Yeah, but people can't argue against it.
Rankings.
People can't argue against it, and if they like, you just can't argue against it, can you?
The thing is,
that's not true whatsoever.
You have to determine like your data range, because like power rankings is very subjective. So you have to decide, is it like a month for the qualifiers? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 1 week? Is it just 1 week? And then you have to decide your time frame and then assess the teams within that time frame and like moving forward. And it's just, I almost cried during the recording of my Power Rankings episode today because I was just so disappointed in my lack of ability to properly determine where teams should be. And I just knew that some little Timmy at home was going to tell Money that his team wasn't higher in the rankings. And I thought of the abusive comments I would get because I put the Gladiators at 12th, and I just couldn't deal with it.
You can solve this problem easy. Just do what Josh does and take money under the table from Guangzhou, and then just put all the
Hey, it worked though, didn't it?
From high.
Worked though, didn't it?
Recently.
Hey, Guangzhou.
Well, that's a T-Mobile mark. Not even. Why? Anyway, I posted a tweet. I posted a tweet saying how fun it is to watch Genji and how fun it is to see him in the meta again. And I must have just accidentally invited the Overwatch general chat forums to just parade me with messages, because my mentions have been filled with, I kid you not, hundreds of tweets from people who don't even follow me but are just calling me out saying, Genji's so broken in my rank. How can you say this? There's no outplay, there's no counterplay. Well, listen, maybe if you're on T-Mobile's 5G network, you would have good internet too, and you'd be able to actually handle the Genjis coming your way. Because when I'm on T-Mobile's 5G network, I know they've got my back. I know that it's got low latency. I know that when I go from point A to point B and I'm capping it up and I'm dashing and I'm right-clicking and I'm getting the resets and all the business, T-Mobile's got my back. Because guess what? They have America's largest 5G network, covering over 215 million people nationwide in nearly 6,000 cities and towns all around America. So when you stream, and when you're gaming, and when you're watching videos, and maybe you're even watching Jake's YouTube channel, you know, because he's been pulling out Genji little videos. He's getting like 40 kills and stuff. Who knows? It doesn't matter, because you're using T-Mobile. You know they got your back. You're going to be no buffering, just pure streaming all day, every day. And even better, let me tell you this. Here's a little tidbit on top that I'm going to include just for all you listeners, and maybe you just want to listen, huh? The Nation 5 5G network works indoors and outdoors.
Whoa.
Pog
covering
champ.
thousands of miles, while the competition only covers city blocks. That's what the corporations don't want you to know. Alongside other things, internally, pyramid schemes and stuff. I don't know where it really goes beyond that, but the corporations are trying to hide all sorts. But 5G's superior mobile network is another one. So rank up.
What you're
and
trying
take,
to say.
Listen.
The corporations
One more paragraph. One more paragraph, Johnny. One more paragraph. Rank up and take the wireless game to the next level with T-Mobile. Visit T-Mobile.com today, and your game will thank you. That's what I had to include because of legality reasons. Otherwise, I was about to get sued.
Kurt's doing his job. Love it.
Thank you, best. Thank you, Bren. But I think more importantly, thank you, Kurt.
Yeah.
Why?
Thank you, Kurt.
And even more importantly,
Kurt's all about it. Yeah.
Even more importantly, thank you, Jeff Kaplan, for making Genji playable. Oh my god, it's so much fun. Like, I don't know how people can watch and be mad at this.
Yeah, people were tweeting me as well, and they're like, "Oh, but we really like the May and the McCree." Like, no, get it out.
Listen, here's what I've realized.
I'll tell you what. I'm so excited.
Give me Tracer. I'm
so excited for the Overwatch League to start again, so we can experience new metas because of hero pools. It's going to be so great. I love hero pools as a system, and I embrace the versatility that it really brings into the Overwatch League and these different kind of metas. There's been some big proponents behind that, so I can't wait for them to ban out Genji and Widowmaker. It's been good.
Can we talk about why people in lower ranks hate Genji? Like, what are the inherent reasons? Because I think the conclusion I've come to is that you never really remember the moment you died because you got frozen by a Mei. You just consider it that. But when you die to a Genji, for some reason, people always remember the bad anecdotes of them dying to a Genji.
So I can tell you why. And it's something that we had an issue with back in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, which was actually a pretty decent game, but most of the general population hated it. It had a high skill ceiling in terms of like movement. Like it had like double jumps and like boost jumps side to side. I think they were called like exo jumps or something like that.
Yeah.
The general community hated it because the higher skill gap players would be above them, behind them, around them, and you could not see where they were. As soon as you were killed by something off of your screen, you had not a clue. So when a good Genji player plays against lower ranked people, they are above their head, they are behind them, they're like dashing inside of them.
And that's why they don't like it?
I'm not gonna lie.
There's no way that they can counter it.
That sounds more like Sideshow Zenyatta.
That's true. That is all over people.
Somehow the Sideshow Zenyatta ends up on top of you, behind you. It's everywhere.
I agree with you though, Matt. I think that's a big part of the reason why people dislike playing against Genji is because the mobility is so large that they find it difficult to kill.
Yes.
And so if you don't have a way to easily shut down that hero, you're just going to get outplayed by it, and you feel like there was nothing that you could really do.
It's why people don't really complain as much about a hero like Widowmaker, because you can stream. Yeah, are we just ripping Jake's stream for Genji? We had all the Overwatch plays over the weekend, and we took a Jake stream highlight. Anyway, but yeah, you like look at how fast like he's moving, like he's behind this Ash, he has no way to react. Like it's like people don't complain that much about Widowmaker, because Widowmaker, you can see her on your screen. She's typically not out of your POV.
A lot of people complain about Widowmaker, Matt. A lot of people.
I mean, maybe those people are playing the wrong genre of games. Maybe they should play Minecraft Dungeons. I don't know.
These people, I don't think they want to be playing a shooter. They want to be playing. So the people that would call me out, I did some market research and I analyzed their bios, and a large majority of them was Zenyatta mains, because they've just got in their profile Zenyatta one trick, and then they've got their peak SR from what they got when there was a Zenyatta meta, and then from that point on, they've just continued playing Zenyatta, even if it's not that good in ranked, and then they get absolutely stomped by a Genji player. Another reason I think people are complaining about it. Another reason I think people are complaining about it is because all the Genji one tricks that were just playing Genji even when he was bad, well, now they're still playing Genji, but he's much better. So their starting SR value is going to be sort of lower compared to where they really probably should be at, based on where the new values are.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. The hero is overtuned, I think.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Yeah,
a little bit.
It's not broken. It's not busted. It's not 1v6ing people. But the win rate is really high. The pick rate is really high because he's fun. And he's also powerful at a pro level. So Genji is the most powerful hero in the game at the moment, I think.
You think he's the most powerful hero in the game at the moment?
With the game? I would agree, in combination with the way Brig worked in the Summer Showdown.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different.
75 HP Genji with 75 armor. And the deflect cancel, and that is absurd. Like with new Brig, who knows?
I think the Baptiste or the Brig change is going to make a big difference, like where you can't stack HP, because then it just heals up. but it doesn't add value like on top of the max health.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be really good for the game.
I mean, that's a huge change, right, for flankers.
I don't like it. I think it kind of sucks because
Are you kidding me?
I think it makes Brig it just makes Brig an inspire bot. You're just trying to hit people to trigger your inspire, and that's it. Like Brig's only going to be used in brawl comps now. There's nothing else that you can do with that hero. Whereas previously, it was kind of cool that she could empower little DPS heroes. It's cool to see DPS players finally carrying.
I disagree.
Isn't it?
But I think the reason you're seeing Genji is a mixture of Brig enabling the flankers, but also Genji being buffed. But we saw one of the best metas we've ever seen when Brig was banned earlier with the trash comp, the Tracer Ashe comp.
Well,
without Brig.
But you still saw Tracer Ashe being played when Brig was in as well.
Yes.
The Brig didn't make any difference.
But
to that.
But it
made
did.
it stronger, if anything.
But it did, because I think that we saw a lot less. Okay, riddle me this, guys. When we were watching the games last week, okay, when the teams were a little bit uncomfortable, when there was a lot more teams playing Tracer Ashe, was it or was it not less entertaining than the previous 2 weeks? I think it was less entertaining. And I think it's because Brigitte's armor doesn't allow for those pop-off moments. Like a Tracer is mitigated, but also enabled by Brigitte. So when you take away the armor packs, it means that Tracer can pop off a lot more, because armor packs are one of the biggest deterrents for Tracer, but also one of the biggest enablers for it.
Let me talk about a bit of what the patch notes are, so people have a good idea of what we're actually even talking about moving forward. So there's only 3 changes.
This is how good Kurt is. As soon as he hears you talking about patch notes, I hear the fucking keyboard working, and he's typing patch notes. Overwatch.
We didn't have patch notes in there, but we may as well talk about it, because I was going to talk about the patch notes next week, but we kind of got on the topic. So there's only 4 heroes that get adjusted. So it's Ashe with the cooldown increase of dynamite from 10 to 12 seconds. So this will have a good change. I think this will have like some effect, right? Where teams like to use Ashe for the dynamite and the halt and whatnot. But the Brig one, the repair pack, so no longer grants an additional armor health pool. So this will not allow you to get past the 200 HP or 150 HP on some of those heroes. Which is what we've been seeing abused. Diva gets a bunch of buffs, by the way, because Diva needed buffs.
Ridiculous, actually.
I don't understand why they've done that. Why don't they try and bring other off-tanks into line with Sigma instead of buffing Diva?
So she can move faster while shooting now. Defense matrix, the cooldown goes down a half of a second, and then the micro missiles activate faster. And then we get a Junkrat quality of life changes?
Question mark? To play.
Yeah. I mean, it.
Like, so you're not. There's not.
I don't think it's
there's
gonna
less
be
dead time when you're ulting or something. I don't know how it really works, but
I don't think the Junkrat ones will be much of a change.
Yeah.
I think they previously made a change to Junkrat, where his concussion mine got thrown further. And it was supposed to be a buff, but it was actually a nerf because you couldn't do certain mobility mechanics anymore. And so this change is trying to make the mobility mechanics available again, right? Because, for example, you throw your mine to the side and you explode it immediately in order to jump very quickly to the left or to the right or whatever. And because they buffed the throw speed, he yeets his fucking thing so far away that it can't explode on him anymore. So they're making it so that you can trigger it quicker, so that you can actually jump it.
Okay.
I actually saw Junkrat played this weekend.
Dude, are you a developer in disguise?
No, I just saw a video about it. Someone was complaining about it on the Reddit, so I was like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, play the Jake clip again. Yeah.
Find some J-Crack clips.
I love the bait, how they're acknowledging that like Junkrat is pretty bad right now, but they're like, we're not actually going to buff you. We're just, some quality of life changes to good old Junkrat.
1 o'clock in the fucking morning, dude. Chengdu pulls out Junkrat on Temple of Anubis against, I think it was Guangzhou.
Well, that's a classic pick.
Mitch is like, why? We actually found a Jake Junkrat clip. Mitch is like, what do you think I'm doing here with the Junkrat? I was like trying to lose faster. I don't know. Like, there's zero reason to be playing Junkrat right now.
In the current meta, yeah. I totally.
Oh, dude, my God. Imagine the halt Riptire.
As if Riptire isn't powerful enough.
Yeah. Yeah, look at that.
Stick Riptire.
Yeah.
What a god. What a god.
Big. Look at this dude.
Dude, Jay could still play an owl.
Yeah.
What heroes?
Dude, the Shock should pick him up to play Genji and Junkrat.
Good idea.
Well, there are open trials available for the San Francisco Shock. So
Bren's already submitted an application.
I'm waiting for them to reach out to me. I'm not going to lower myself down to that level.
Right.
I might just submit one. Why not?
You want to talk about the upsets that actually occurred this week? Because, I mean, where do we even begin with this? There are so many to even talk about here. The entire first round in the Summer Showdown was almost entirely upsets, with the exception of the Dallas, Paris.
Dallas, Paris.
Yeah.
What was the biggest upset, you think?
Oh, I mean, the biggest upset team has got to be Toronto because they upset the Valiant and then Atlanta. Yeah. So they had like double upset, right? So they were certainly the biggest team that upset. But in terms of like a single result,
I think the APAC finals. Why not Guangzhou over Shanghai?
Oh, well, I mean, we were just talking about the round ones, but yeah.
I mean, you know, if you want to be fair as well, the fact that someone beat the Shock is an accomplishment.
That's a pretty big upset, yeah.
True.
Yeah.
True.
But I think that when you consider the level of dominance that Shanghai has had in Asia, it's almost more surprising to me that they lost rather than the Shock, because the Shock was like a really close game against a team that we knew was super dangerous. Whereas I don't think any of us we talked about Paris. Previous episode we talked about Paris. We said they had upset potential. None of us were like predicting the Guangzhou charge to upset the Shanghai Dragon.
Upset potential.
Yeah,
for some reason you were hot on Atlanta. I was hot on Paris. I'll come out and say it right now. Vive la France.
Dude,
Brennon.
Remember
where were they in your ranking?
Paris to win it all in like episode like 20?
True.
Yeah.
Where did you put it in your bracket?
Where did I put Paris in my bracket?
Yeah.
I think I put them in my no, I didn't put them in my finals. I wanted to.
I put them in the finals.
Yeah, you did.
I begged the fucking
Philly.
I put a fucking Paris cake in the finals.
What do you mean?
Sorry, what?
I baked a Paris cake to
that
get
my
into the
bracket?
Finals. I didn't put the cake in the bracket. No.
But that's my bracket is terrible.
But you made a garlic cake.
Dude.
Yeah, the people don't know that yet, Johnny, but yes, I did.
A garlic cake?
Yeah, I put a lot of garlic in the cake. I put like 7 cloves of garlic in the cake.
7 cloves?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Because I thought the sugar would mask it, so I wanted to make sure it had a
garlic is one of the most.
What other dish do you have 7 cloves of garlic?
Spaghetti bolognese,
bro.
You
garlic is one of the most potent ingredients one can use, and you put 7 cloves in thinking sugar was going to mask it. Sugar doesn't have a goddamn odor. In what world do you think the sugar was going to mask that?
I didn't put 7 cloves in the cake. I split 7 cloves between the cake and the frosting.
Well, you put garlic in the buttercream?
I made garlic butter, and wherever I put in butter, I put in garlic butter instead. So it went in the cake and it went in the frosting.
Bro, I thought my Shanghai snakes cake was tragic, but
Beth ate the most cake out of all of us. She had 1 bite and nearly threw up.
We ate my whole cake. My cake was pretty good. It was ugly as fuck, but it was good.
I'm sure it was. I mean, cake is very difficult to mess up.
No,
it's difficult. It's difficult.
What do you mean it's difficult?
So I forgot. Well, I mean, we're getting into it now.
Yeah,
I've got a whole stream.
Sorry, Kurt.
I don't want to spoil it. You know, I've got a whole 3-hour stream ready to give my.
Kurt did the graphics and wrote NA upsets, and then everybody started shouting Shanghai.
Who's that talking about
in North America
Asian
and upset
side?
about this cake.
All right. Let's. What?
I'm trying to keep us on track here.
Dude, there were so many like disappointing teams in round 1. Like Florida looked really poor.
All right. Well, okay.
Gladiators.
If you want evidence that Genji is overtuned, you just look at Toronto's performance off the back of agilities.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I think that's a big showcase of, because Overwatch is not really a game anymore where one individual player can have a big impact, and it's disingenuous to suggest that agilities was the only one who played well, and that's the reason that they went far.
It was a large.
But I will say though that like Toronto has always played teams pretty close. They just never able to get over the hump. So
They got 3-0'd by Atlanta like a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, but having a meta where they have like somebody who can really like, because agilities, we all know like his Genji's sick and he has the ability to just like go crazy, right?
Yeah.
Having that hero be super powerful probably couldn't have come at a better time for them.
I mean, Toronto also had the pleasure of playing against two teams who refused to play Genji properly.
Yes,
I mean,
it's true.
Edison was the only person that played Genji in either of their matches. Did KSF pull it out at any point?
He did, actually.
Yeah.
Did he? The Valiant, I mean, were boomed for multiple reasons. They're playing Gig and Apply as well. So the Valiant are just out of it, you know, mentally coming into this game, I think. But also, none of the teams that Toronto played against really played the Genji. Edison tried, but it wasn't good.
Do you think any of these teams that won in the first round have like staying potential for later in the season?
Depends if Genji's
like that they could like ascend to like a higher level of where they currently are, or like make some noise in the overall playoffs. Like specifically, I guess Toronto, Washington, Houston.
I think, I mean, primarily Defiant. I think this meta just suited them perfectly.
Yeah.
Because Logix as well doesn't need to have these pop-off moments. Like Logix can just sit on Ashe in the back and just kind of do his own thing. And Agilities can play an aggressive Genji like he's always been known for. I mean, throughout his entire career, Agilities has been known for overextending and like dying mid-blades, etc. But now he has Immortality Field, he has Brig Armor, like it's perfect for him. And then you have like, you know, Nevix doing average Sigma stuff as well. He actually played quite well in this tournament. But I think this is just perfect for the Defiant in a pretty hard meta. Like how many teams have a player that can just play a perfect Genji or play like a Tracer and a Genji? Like it's hard to play in this meta.
Yeah.
I'm going to be harsh here, but I don't think Agilities has really shown up on any other role.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah,
like,
Isfar hasn't been bad in the past.
Was okay.
But
like it's not above average.
Moments. But yeah, I mean, it's just he's very streaky on some of those other heroes, right?
Yeah, he's always been just this Genji player. He built up a reputation of being a Genji player, and now he's got his comfort pick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna also. There are so many shit teams in NA for this meta. There are so many teams that have built their roster around either having like a May pick or double hit scan who just planked this week. Absolutely planked. Like for the Valiant to look so shit and then Mayhem to look pretty mediocre compared to how they looked previously. The Mayhem took, I swear, the Mayhem took all the wrong lessons from their game against Houston. I can only think that is the solution, or that is the reason that they looked even worse at the Summer Showdown, because they play a game against Houston where Yaki's playing Genji, right? And they do well at the beginning. They throw a couple of maps in the middle, and then Yaki goes Tracer at the end on control and wins. And I think that they had a team meeting afterwards, and they went, Yaki Tracer. We should have just stuck to the Tracer the whole time, man. That was the key. We should have just done that. And then they come into this match, and Yaki, as far as I can remember, only played Tracer, and they lose 1-3. But they don't even try the Genji at any point, even though Yaki has a competent Genji on his side. It just didn't make any sense. Like Florida took the exact wrong lessons away from their Houston game.
I agree with you, and I think actually it's something that, I mean, as we'll talk about it later with Philly, like they actually learned the right lesson, right? Is they realized that I mean, we talked about it on the show. Like we were like, hey, we want to see EQO next week, right? And like EQO came in, and he was like a fucking rock star. Where I think Florida, like you mentioned, Josh, they kind of thought that, hey, you know, we can get by with the Tracer comp. We think it's because a lot of teams, I think, were still kind of on the fence about Genji even coming into the week. I know I've read a bunch of stuff about like the APAC teams, and they were even saying like they had some thought that the Tracer played it like optimally was better than Genji than that composition, and some teams came out with it. But when the other team had the teams that had the look of both, right, were clearly the best ones.
Yeah.
Flexibility.
But I'm still very like just flabbergasted that like not more of these teams could win games on the back of like their Sigma and their flex support and their hit scan. Because I was making my power rankings today, and I'm like, how can the Florida Mayhem possibly be bad in a meta like this when they have Gargoyle Sigma, Gangnam Jin Baptiste, BQB Ashe? Like, how can they be bad?
Yeah,
and they were full held on 2 maps. They were full held on half their maps.
Yeah. And when I watched even the Shanghai Dragons play, I was profoundly unimpressed. And I think that a lot of people did not understand this meta. And I think that this is a weird point to kind of talk to our audience about, but this meta plays differently than the last year and a half of Overwatch.
Yeah.
It's such a put all your resources in one guy kind of meta. And this is not how Overwatch has been played for maybe 2 years. It just hasn't been like this. You haven't had DPS carries. You haven't had all of your resources go into one dude. You haven't had to play this like sacrificial tank style. It's been all about your tanks and your supports. And even though the brig is incredibly important and your tanks are really important at being able to set up, at the end of the day, if you don't have that Genji player, you're falling flat.
Yeah, when was the last time we had a meta where like a DPS player kind of just pops off and that's really, there's nothing else you can really do? I mean, and especially now, like with the meta that this was in, like, you know, you have Widow and Genji, like two heroes who can just kind of take control of a game.
A lot of clutch potential.
Right. And Linkster is somebody who's like pretty streaky, but he can come up big in like Widow scenarios. Dante, I mean, what I think is the most important, or was the most important, is players that can play both Tracer and Genji. Like, how many teams actually had that option to not really switch and see both? The Shock tried it a little bit with Striker, EQO, Dante. There weren't many. Yeah, I mean, there weren't many others, but how many players in the league can you say have a good Genji and good Tracer in their hero pools? Like, there's not many.
And that's because Genji's been, to Prophet and Decay, actually. Decay's really good at it as well. Mm-hmm. But it's been a factor of Genji just being out of the meta for so long.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Traded away their Genji player after getting rid of another player, allowing another player to leave who could have played Genji. And you know, I think they were feeling perfectly safe. They're like, Genji meta, you must be kidding, right? That's not coming. People are mocking like a Doomfist meta as well, but I don't know, dude. Any little balance change and you don't know what kind of meta you're going to end up in. So some of these teams that were more built with like a more old school mindset of like a 2018 mindset, like the Toronto Defiant, have actually ended up having an all right run of it.
Everyone's going to be looking now for projectile players, right? When like nobody ever thought they would ever need like a Genji, a Doomfist, or Pharah like anytime soon, even like you're going to have tons of teams. I mean, that's where I think the Shock, like with their open tryout thing, is like, hey, we have any Genji players on the ladder or Doomfist players? Sign up, please.
What do we think is the most disappointing team then that's come out of the NA side of things?
So I was gonna say Florida almost, but I actually think Houston has the highest potential out of those teams that won in round one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Houston and maybe even Washington as well.
And I wouldn't say Valiant either, because we didn't see the Valiant at kind of like their full strength. I almost want to say the Gladiators, like, even though the Tuba's a good, like a sick Genji player, like he should still be able to put up like a better fight than that. I feel like if you're the Gladiators. Like, I think it's gotta be the Gladiators.
You can't lose to the Washington Justice after just recently losing to the Boston Uprising as well, and not be the most disappointing team in the league. Like, this is the kind of team that we hoped was going to be aiming for top 5 again in the season, and they have just fallen over. An absolutely appalling showing in recent weeks from the Gladiators, honestly.
Yeah.
My headphones stopped working. What are we talking about?
We were saying, what's the most disappointing team in NA that lost in round one? We kind of came to the conclusion it's the Gladiators. Yeah.
I had to put them at 12th in my power ranking.
Out of the NA teams?
I couldn't believe it.
Bro, like, their team should be so much better, bro.
How do you argue against that, though? Like, who can they... Who are they better than?
But they shouldn't be.
Yeah,
no, they shouldn't be, but I don't think there's an argument against it. They just looked really quite poor.
My opinion on the Gladiators, though, is that they haven't been focused on the right stuff. So the start of the season, they seem like they're trying to play really complex stuff. Like their coaches are telling their team that they want to find win conditions in losing fights and try and play like the Shock, you know, where you're investing ults to try and, you know, save fights and play at this like super high level, high tempo. And then you watch OG play, and it seems like the fundamentals just aren't there to be able. You can't run before you can walk, and then they start playing cheesy shit with LH Cloudy, where he's just getting like Reinhardt sped into the backline. It's like, all right, this might get you a couple of wins, but you're not working on any of the stuff to actually improve in the long term. And then you see them play the meta this week, and it's like, okay, good, you're playing the meta, but you actually, your teamwork kind of sucks.
That's the thing. It just doesn't seem like they've improved really almost anywhere, right? Like, where's the point that you can kind of look at the team where they've kind of improved throughout the season? I think they did have a tough go in terms of like metas early on, right? Where we were talking about their secondary DPS, like they didn't really, between Jaru and Mirror, like have another option that could help them in like the Tracer Ashe type of metas, where now with Kevster they do. But it's still just a really underwhelming performance. Like,
they need to go back to the drawing board, not in terms of rejigging their roster, but just like working on the basics. You can't think of yourselves as a top 5 team. You finished top 5 last year, but you have to think of yourselves as like a bottom 3 team right now, because you are. Yeah. You need to start working on the basics again and get all of that shit straight before you start and punch above your weight.
Out, huh? You do one charity stream with David Pay and you think you're boys with him. You can throwing out.
If I was boys with him, maybe I wouldn't be calling him out.
No, I mean, I liked what Deepe said though on Twitter, where he was like, "Look, like this kind of falls on me, right? Like I built this team, like I'm the coach of this team.
I think it's on the coach to accept responsibility for that, though. Always, you always want the coaches to be taking the fire, like the shots coming their way. You don't want your teams, the players, being blamed for it largely, but. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the Shock, because the Shock were the team that everyone was expecting to just take it all in this tournament. I was paying attention to the brackets being built and the leaderboards for it as the tournament was going on, and everyone that was in like the top 10 consistently after every single round of matches up until the semifinals, obviously, but no one had their bracket with Shock not making it to the finals. It just didn't make sense, Yeah. And there was a world that we could have existed in where Shock did make it to the finals, because they were only, one map away, essentially, away from Paris, but obviously it didn't happen. What do we make of Shock not making it to the finals for the first time in, I think, 2 years, right?
Stage 1 of 2019.
I'm going to be real with you. I did not see that.
Stage 1. Stage 1 of 2019.
Yeah, stage 1 of 2019, they didn't make it to the finals, didn't they?
No. They made it to the finals in 2019. Oh. So, like, they've been to every finals since the beginning of 2019.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what you're saying. But
and this is the only time they didn't.
I was stunned that they ended up losing to Paris. Like, I think if you would have asked me before the tournament, like, who I thought would have lost between Shanghai or Shock, I would have definitely said Shanghai, just because I thought there was a little bit stiffer competition.
Yeah.
But I mean, once you saw how Sparkle was playing, and then the fact that there was not really like a fantastic Genji option for the Shock, you kind of could see it happening, and it does come down all the way to the wire. It's not exactly like the Shock.
I don't think you can see
blown
it happen,
out here.
Like, that's hindsight talking. What? Like, we didn't know how.
I literally said, I was like, once you saw Sparkle play Genji, like in the tournament, you could see it happening.
Yeah, I think it's super apparent.
Yeah, before the tournament, I didn't.
Yeah, I think it's super apparent as well. As soon as I don't know about you guys, but watching some matches as well, you could immediately tell which Genji players were more uncomfortable because they hadn't picked it up in a while, and you just knew that they were inherently going to be weaker in that mirror matchup, because it's so important for your Genji player to pop off. Even if you've got the team enabling them, helping them out with the armor packs at the right time, the Holtz comboing up with the dashes, you need to be comfortable in that hero pretty quickly. And I mean, credit to a lot of the players who did turn it around and they got comfortable again.
Yeah, you could
in a short amount of time.
I think I read the interview that Krusty gave after.
I mean, it wasn't an interview; it was a stream.
It was just kind of a stream, yeah. But he was just kind of talking about it, and it didn't really sound like they put a ton of time into the Genji compositions. That, like, they didn't really give Rascal a ton of run on Genji. They kind of thought that they would be able to get by with the Tracer.
I mean, they almost did.
I think he said,
and they almost did. Yeah, they almost did.
I think they said Rascal practiced Genji for 2 days.
Yeah,
leading up to the tournament.
Yeah,
and I mean, I can sort of see where you're coming from, where you adopt the mentality that, like, hey, we're gonna rely a lot on Tracer and then sub Genji in on like the maps we can, and like we have Rascal around anyway, so like we'll probably get away with it. I mean, Choyobin had an incredible tournament still. Violet was just on fire, Twilight Brig, like this was still a stacked team. I think they just needed that final thing to like get across the finish line. Like it was one team fight away.
Yeah,
like, you can't be disappointed by their performance and considering how close the grand final was.
I was thinking about this too. If the Shock get by Paris, do you think they would have beaten Philly?
I think there's a good chance of it.
Shock, yeah, I think Shock would have rolled Philly. Honestly,
You think Shock would have rolled Philly?
I think there's like a
why
play
is
style.
that?
I think there's like a play style matchup between these two teams. I think that whoever takes I think Shock can only get caught off guard by a huge player that they can't shut down. Like they need you need to be super dangerous in order to take down the Shock. Like you need some large clutch potential. And Sparkle and XE absolutely provide that. The way that Philly play is much more measured. It's more like punishing aggression. And I just don't think there's any way that they punish the San Francisco Shock, because the San Francisco Shock is so perfectly coordinated with that aggression. And even though they have the better meta comp in terms of like EQO playing the Genji, EQO is not going to go in there and just annihilate in the same way that Sparkle does. And they just couldn't figure out how to shut Sparkle down. And that to me is the biggest reason that they lost, is that they just couldn't shut Sparkle down. Whereas Philly had like a specific counterplay to shutting Sparkle down, which very nearly worked. They did a great job at taking him out of the fight. But I think that if we had seen Philly play against a Shock,
I think the
Philly don't take control of the tempo in the same way that Paris do. And I think you only beat the Shock if you take control of the tempo.
I think they would have had a chance. I was actually almost going to say the opposite of what you. I think with EQO on Genji, I think they actually would have had. They would have had a much. No, I don't want to say it would have been a very tough match, I think, as well.
As a player, I think your mindset shifts. Like if you're up against Striker's Tracer, the win condition shifts for the Philadelphia Fusion. And I don't think they would have played Genji as passively against the Shock, but I think against the Paris Eternal, it sort of worked. And but like, it's up in the air, and like, I don't want to claim for certain what would happen, but a player like Fury wouldn't have been able to have as much impact as he had on that Sigma against, for example, Striker's Tracer. But at the same time, I do think that they would have sped up things, and EQO would have played a faster Genji. Not necessarily as fast as Sparkle, but I think they would have recognized that they can't sit back against Striker's Tracer, because over time he'll get more value. But yeah, I mean, it's very much up in the air. I think I would have predicted Shock in that matchup.
Yeah, I think we all probably would have, but
wouldn't have been able to.
I kind of agree with you, Josh. I think that there's a chance that Shock would have rolled them just off the basis of what you've already talked about. But I mean,
I'm
part
not
of me
like
also
4-0, but
doesn't want to count Philly out because of how certain they were that they were going to be playing against Shock in the finals.
Bro, I mean, we can talk about Paris a lot more, right? Because they end up winning, and I'm sure we will. But man, dude, EQO was fucking sick this weekend. Like,
yeah, I mean, let's talk Paris versus Philly then.
Yeah, like it's just good to see him back in the lineup and playing again. Like they look, for whatever reason, the team just looks way more comfortable with him in. Like, I don't know if like he's adding to their shot calling or
he is a big shot caller. Yeah,
he was a big shot caller for them in the past, but.
That guy can't shut up. There's no way that he's gone quieter over time.
I almost would be surprised if they give us a different look, like in terms of DPS the rest of the season, because like EQO can play all the hit scan, he can play projectile, like.
The thing is, EQO is he's such a headstrong player. I mean, this play here was
such a sick play.
I couldn't believe it. I actually lost sleep last night thinking that I didn't give this play justice because of how fucking sick it was. Like,
it was unbelievable.
It might be. Like, I remember what me and Mitch kind of said, the Prophet Volskaya thing.
That was pretty sick.
And that was nuts.
I mean, this was just the nastiest play just in the context of it. If they had won that map, I can't deny that I wanted Philly to win off the back of that play.
Yeah.
I said this in the post show as well, that I think EQO, I mean, we'll look at the play again before I actually bring down the energy, because this was so sick. But like I said, two things on the post show. One, I thought of something like Kaiser's Earth Shatter, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Like they looked away because of Haxal's Genji, and he landed a fat shatter. But like the mechanics of this, like turning this fight around, like almost 1v5, because Carpe's Tracer gets back. But then the second thing I said as well, was that there's this kind of like duality to this map and the series in general, where like EQO carried all the way, and then in the last 30 seconds of Rialto, he pulled out the blade in the second to last fight and just insta-died with it. And as a player, like there are some moments in my career still, like 3 years later, where I'm like, I have this one moment that I will never forget. And I saw EQO pull out that Dragon Blade in the second to last fight and like make a big mistake. And I was like, oh, that's one of those moments like you never forget. That's like one of those moments where you like look back at forever, where you're like, what if I held onto my blade and we had Supercharger and Amp Matrix for the next fight and we could have won it. Like it was heartbreaking.
Like it was so good to see like how excited Paris was winning, but it was also like this Philly team always comes so close. Like they're always like right there, and like I mean, you look back like let's say the year ends and like they don't win or whatnot. Like you look back on the first 3 years of like the Philadelphia Fusion as like an organization, and like you kind of flip like 4 or 5 maps between the 3 years a different way, and like they are like the premier team in the league, right? Like they're not like, it's literally like you would so much rather be in a situation like, I mean, Johnny, I'm sure you can speak on it as a player, but like it's way easier to coming to terms with like losing things like this, like when you're like getting owned, like when you're just getting blown out, like losing these games consistently by like a map or a play, and not like one but like numerous, is just like I don't think I could explain it well enough.
No,
like,
I know it's
just brutal.
I always reference this one movie. Oh my god, you would know the name of it, Matt, because you know American sports movies. It's baseball, like when they figured out the name of the thing, where like you look at the statistics of players and you put Moneyball.
Yeah.
At the start of Moneyball, the coach like goes to the radio and he has on the repeat like the final game they lost in the playoffs or whatever, and he just rewinds and listens to the same like last play or whatever over and over again. I still have that with us losing to Misfits at E-League, where I will go back to the last fight of that match and just rewatch that last team fight and how we lost that series. Because like it's so heartbreaking. Like you're so emotionally attached to this map that it's impossible to like erase it from your mind. Like it's so hard to get over. It's I can't explain it. It's
thankfully for the Philadelphia Fusion, they did get bopped in the grand finals of 2018.
That's true.
So even though they were one match away, they were many maps away. So you know what? Don't worry about it. Actually,
but I do think though. I think Philly, with playing Paris that close, definitely. I mean, I already thought they were like a real kind of contender overall for the season in NA, and I think with the Shock showing, some weaknesses, I think we probably need to take Philly a little bit more seriously.
Personally, from my perspective, I've always looked at Philly as this team that's clamoring, I suppose, to be a top team, but I've never. I've always considered them a top team, but I've never really considered them capable of beating out the Shock. And it's clear that when this meta fell into their wheelhouse, even outside of that, I think I would give them. Josh, you seem to think that they would go rolled by Shock. I think I would have put it down to be a little bit more closer than some people would have thought. I think after this,
I think it would have been like a 4-1, 4-2 to the Shock. Personally,
the reason I think that is because Philly have gone from, in my mind, this team that's just trying to scrape that top spot to now being a serious contender at any moment to be that number one team. I think
it's hard with Philly, in my opinion, because they either get it or they don't. And when they played in the main melee, they didn't get it. They sucked. Yeah. Like they just did not understand what they were supposed to be doing whatsoever. And they got rolled by the Florida Mayhem. And then they go into the game against the Shock and they're playing weird comps, or not even weird comps, but they're not integrating the Genji. And what were they playing? They're playing some
which was like Tracer Ash stuff, right?
Yeah, it was like Tracer Ash stuff, but they were just getting rolled by the Shock, like absolutely rolled. Like their tank line was just getting pushed in. So I think that for Philly, it's a bit similar to Paris, where You're only going to beat the Shock if your DPS can carry.
The one thing
because the Shock have the best coordination in NA, and you just can't overtake that in most metas.
I think it's possible though, like with some of the balance changes we were just talking about, like if D.Va becomes a main, again, like Fury becomes like way more impactful, right? Like even that much more impactful. I thought Sigma was pretty good. Put Alarm back on like the Zen or Batiste, like some of those heroes, right? Like the Ana, like I think there's like this is a good meta for Philly, but I also think there could potentially be even better metas ahead for them.
I don't think so. I think the only player that is able to outpace their opposition on the Shock is that flex DPS position. Hit scan, no, Ants is going to win that one against Carpe most of the time, honestly, and we saw that in their most recent match. The tank line, no way. You talk about Fury being so good, but Troy Oben's right there with him the entire way.
You don't think if it was like a Winston situation, like with Sato, like a Winston D.Va, where Sato and Fury could stand up to Smurf and Choi?
Maybe the slightest bit, but there's no way where Alarm just outpaces Violet and Twilight. The roster's too stacked to get by on just raw talent alone, unless it comes down to that flex DPS position, which is the only place where the Shock are lacking.
I don't know if I agree with you with the Ants and Carpe thing. I think
shit on them when he was playing it recently, when they were playing like a Widow Tracer meta.
I think that a reason they looked so good was because of EQO and Carpe. And I wonder what this fusion team would look like if they had like a better hit scan than Hisu. I don't know if this team can rely on Hisu too much, because I think that Ivy fills his role. I think that Carpe is overall a great damage player that is forced to flex a bit too much in this team, because there's so many hit scan roles, and like he's forced to play the Tracer and sometimes the Widow and sometimes the Ashe. It's like that's a lot of commitment to like different kind of roles. It's like swapping between being the primary and secondary damage player, as you like to put it, Josh. Whereas I think if he was stuck on one role, like just like perma Tracer, and then you have a better like Hisu kind of player to back him up, or he's permanently the Ashe, and then you have a better like
when they did towards the end of the May Melee, they did put in, I believe it was like a Gibraltar game, like towards the end of their match against Florida, they did put EQO in to play like the I believe it was like, what did he play, Ashe or did he play Tracer? I think he played the
Tracer.
Oh, okay, he played Tracer, yeah. But I mean, I don't know if he's the option for double hit scan.
I don't think Carpe was. I kind of disagree with you, Johnny, in terms of like Carpe being one of the players that was dominant on this team. I sometimes he almost lost in the game. I think back to that moment on Blizzard World when he just overextended.
Well, okay, he died like 3
Jesus
times.
Christ. Yeah, that was crazy.
There were like 3 times he died.
Yeah,
but
a lot of times he overextended. But I mean,
there's so much game time. You can't focus on those.
I think though what Johnny's saying is like, would you go into a series like against the Shock and automatically like write Carpe off in terms of the one-on-one against Hans? I definitely would not.
I wouldn't either, to be honest.
Carpe was a large part why they got here. Because they relied on Ashe and EQO to clean up what he started.
Even Krusty said in his interview, where he was just, I say his interview, he was talking to his stream. Probably with a, I don't know, very relaxed setting, clearly trolling in it because he was saying he was considering playing Super Genji. But the guy also said that he felt like Ans's lack of experience really hurt them in a lot of the regards here, just in terms of the game sense in a match, not knowing what to look out for. And
he had a kind of quiet game. I am surprised that both Ans and Carpe weren't able to take advantage of the fact that Exy played so much McCree. Like if you're playing against a team and they are running McCree to shut down the Genji or shut down the Tracer, the theoretical advantage that you have is that your long range hit scan, like the Ashe or the Widow, can just take sightlines for free. They don't have to worry about the enemy hit scan really, because it's not like a McCree's going to be plinking you from across the map. I mean, Exy does do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Did they win?
I would like to rewatch the matches.
They did win with
McCree was so good, actually. It was surprisingly good.
I want to rewatch the matches and see what kind of range that they were playing the Widow from. Because
I mean,
depending on where you're playing it from, it does negate the amount of impact you can have against McCree.
Yeah, and the McCree played super safe, like behind the shields.
Well, I'm just talking about the Widowmaker. If you have to play the Widowmaker with your team and your line of sight angles are pretty reduced, you can take better line of sight angles from longer distances, but then you're more susceptible to, I don't know, the Genji player or whatever else.
Yeah.
I need to rewatch the games because I can't talk off the top of my head about whether or not I was seeing that, but it does limit how much you can do against the McCree.
We talked a lot about Philly, but I think we should probably go talk about Paris now. Obviously,
yeah, Paris is the team that went from the first round of matches against Dallas all the way to the finals with Fielder playing on 200 ping at 4:00 in the morning.
I felt so bad for Fielder when they showed the player cam. He looked like exhausted, and then I was like, Chelsea's like, why isn't that guy getting up and celebrating with them? It's like because he's flying from Korea, so he's not there in the room. But what a weekend for this team, and I also got to say, like, I think the coaches deserve a lot of credit as well. Like,
he's putting up Bren.
The inclusion of putting like Soon and Nico in on like the first map, right? Like swapping like Ben Best and No Smite, because I think a lot of people in that type of situation could have gotten really hung up on how good you looked with the Sparkle Genji and just kind of ditched some of the strategies you had and been like, oh, fuck it, just put them in there.
A lot of teams.
But they stuck to their guns though. I think that was really.
Well, that's also
nice.
I want to, because a lot of people are roasting Plat Chat for our episode title that was "Is Sparkle holding back the Paris Eternal?"
Yeah, go back and watch the games from when they played that. I
blocked that guy on Twitter.
But also, the whole point of that topic was that's what they were doing. They were forcing Sparkle in the wrong situations. Yeah. They were playing him on the May on King's Row and stuff like that. And they were playing like Sparkle Nico on King's Row for like a Farah Doom composition. It was tragic. And I love that the coaches have found great positions for everybody on their roster. They've found the places where Soon can excel and where Nico can excel and where Soon can play with Sparkle. It's so good.
They were the best control team in the entire tournament. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
because they were willing to do that.
Nico, we were like, where the hell is he going to play? Like, ever. Right? We were just kind of like, where does he fit in?
About a lot of the players.
Yeah, and I also think, too, there's a little bit of, XE took so much time off, right? Like, remember how sick he was at the beginning of the year? Like, we were talking about his play.
The best McCree in the world, honestly.
But then he basically disappeared for what, like 11 weeks, 12 weeks? And then he kind of come back recently, and he didn't like miss a beat. I mean, he was crazy good.
Yeah, he was excellent.
Can this team though, like how you mentioned, Josh, where you thought like this is like a meta that's great for Philly, and like who knows what happens in the future with that. What do you think about Paris?
I think Paris can only reach these kind of heights if they have a meta where Sparkle can play a great hero for him.
Yeah,
they're still going to be a good team. Like they proved that when they played like Soon and Nico on the control maps, and they're good at the Reaper May kind of stuff or the May Sim and that kind of shit. So they're still going to be able to get wins. But are they going to be able to beat the second and third best teams, or the first and second best teams, however you want to say it, in North America? Are they going to be able to do that and like make tournament runs constantly? No, not unless Sparkle is playing a god hero where he's got like the Genji and the Doomfist. And like, maybe you could also say the like Farah possibly, if Sparkle's able to pull that out too. But outside of a few key heroes, Sparkle's just going to be a good player. He's not going to be an unbelievable carry player. And they found a meta right now where Sparkle is an unbelievable carry player.
I think I disagree with you on your point about Paris not being capable of reaching the same heights of beating those top teams when they're not running Sparkle. Like, if anything, this tournament has shown that the coaching staff are confident in their ability to beat good opponents while subbing out their star player.
That's true, yeah.
And I think for the future, if they build on that and they don't forget the lessons they've learned, there's no reason to think. I know I'm the biggest Paris fan here, apparently, the one that predicted they could have gone to the finals. Still think they might go to the finals. I think the potential's still there. I don't think I can count them out that easily.
They won one map without Sparkle, though. Right? Like, that was it. They subbed Nico in for Li Zhang, and that was it. Mm-hmm. They played Sparkle on every other map. They played Sparkle on May with Soon for one of the maps, but the rest of the time Sparkle was there.
Yeah, but I think the point you're trying to make is that if you look at this roster across the board, there's a lot of players with an X factor to them, which you don't see on a lot of other teams. Like FD God can always pull something out. Fielder has been sensational, and he's playing on 200 ping.
Imagine what happens when Fielder gets on normal
Hanbin
ping.
is fantastic. Ben best blow up. Like it's a complete team, right? So I agree with you, Sideshow, that like Sparkle adds the X factor. Like he's the extra 10%, but they have a great foundation to build on that he's plugged into.
The only thing I think a double hit scan meta really hurts this team.
Really?
Like
soon.
I think compared to other teams, like the other top teams, I don't think it's bad, but like compared to like an Onsen Striker or like I think when
it's not that.
Yeah, I mean they're not gonna
because bonkers you can't beat that.
They're not gonna be able to beat like I even think like Philly, right, with a double hit scan could prove to be another formidable opponent for them. I think Florida as well, going back in a like double hit scan, I think could be tough for a team like Paris. Where I think I would worry about them in that regard, but I think I think Josh mentioned, like anytime you can get Sparkle on one of these heroes, and if the game keeps kind of trending where I think it's been going for months, like it's going into this more of like a free flowing, more damage dealer centric type of game now, and you see like the changes to Genji, like buffs to Ashe consistently. Like I think they're trying to push the game in that direction. Having somebody like Sparkle is on a hero that he can kind of carry on, you can see the difference it can make.
Here's what I'll. Do you have anything, Bren?
I was just gonna say, what a run the Paris have made as well. You gotta consider how many maps they've played in a row. Like,
oh yeah, that too. 12 maps in a row.
I mean, 12 maps in a row is just absurd. That's a marathon.
It is absolutely the best tournament finale that we've ever seen. You know, because you have two matches that are up there for best of all time, but they're back to back.
Yeah,
you know, like it's absolutely the best tournament final that we've ever seen because you have to consider like the semifinal and the final put together.
Is it better than Shock Titans 7 games where the Shock ran it on Rialto and then the Titans set a record?
Is that you have both of those, like both of those back to back? Yeah, it's just too much.
True. Yeah,
it was just some quality Overwatch back to back. I will say though,
that's 1 day of Overwatch.
How do you quantify the storylines that were built up with that stage 2 Shock Titans match when it went to went to the distance
that was so good.
The revenge of the Shock, getting the win against the Titans, which was sick, and then the other storyline of Fearless's redemption arc in the finals of May Melee. Like
that was pretty cool.
Then reverse sweeping in the first
the
of 4.
arc of the Shanghai Dragons just EMPing everybody in stage 3 and just annoying everybody on their way to a win. I thought you were going to bring that one up from last year.
Dude. I mean,
that was a lot of fun.
I'm a Shanghai stan, but there's been a lot of good finals. But I agree with you, Josh, in terms of like the clump and quality of the games. Like the only thing that would have been better is if Toronto were just like playing up to the level of Philly, and we had 2 fantastic semifinals. But as it happened, Philly kind of had a free pass at the finals.
Yeah. Man, what a drop off from the top 3 to everybody else.
Big tier difference.
Can I just say about Paris before we move on as well that we were talking about how good Paris is, and I think that I would not be surprised if Paris Eternal is top 5 for the rest of the year. Whereas some of these other teams you have like come and go, where it's like, is Valiant consistently going to be top 5? Is Mayhem consistently going to be top 5? Like there's a lot of question marks there. I could see Paris Eternal being a top 5 team for the rest of the year.
I mean, it's completely open, right? I mean, I think you have Shock, Philly, like as like those you kind of trust like for the long haul. And then after that, who the hell is there? I mean, we think the Gladiators, they end up losing to the Justice.
Florida, maybe.
And, Atlanta loses to Toronto. Florida gets first rounded.
Atlanta's good, dude. Atlanta's good.
I liked Atlanta, but then they screwed me. They screwed me.
Bro, we knew you were smoking Skittles when you said that, but you wouldn't back down.
I think they were good.
I thought Atlanta was going to be good.
They looked good.
No, they didn't.
I don't think they didn't. You guys want to move on to the Asian brackets?
Yeah, let's talk about Asia.
All right, let's talk then about Seoul versus Shanghai. Now, I caught a couple of maps of this one, but
I
I am not going to be the voice of determining reason as to what's wrong with Seoul in this conversation.
Well,
Someone want to take it away?
I caught all of them though, because I was up, and my lord, I mean, the first day of matches for Asia, Guangzhou plays Chengdu. Chengdu does what they were just playing. The fucking Chengdu Hunters piss me off more than any other team.
Why?
Because they'll play Jinmu on Genji in week 6, and then in this week they didn't do it once. Unbelievable. They'll play Jinmu on Genji when Genji's horrid. When he hasn't played in months, they'll buzz out Jinmu's Genji. Genji is the strongest he's ever been right now, and they play Junkrat, and they play Junkrat. I was like, I remember I said to Mitch, like Jinmu came in for the second map, and I'm like, oh, I know this is it. They're gonna bust out the Genji, and he just plays Mei the entire time. Yeah. And then Temple of Anubis, he plays Junkrat. I was like, what?
We're not even talking about Chengdu here, Matt. We're talking about Seoul versus Shanghai.
Oh, I mean, well,
that's how much I care. He just needed it to get out.
Honestly,
just, like, venting all weekend.
Shanghai versus Seoul. It was, dude. The biggest thing from that match is DM just dunked on Fitz.
Did, yeah. Holy shit!
Oh my god, Fitz maybe
DM had.
Fitz maybe got 1 kill the whole match. I felt bad for the guy. I mean, it was like everywhere else seemed like pretty competitive between the teams, and I think we kind of. I think Shanghai really got by Seoul so easily because the Widow duel was that one-sided that we didn't really kind of see where Shanghai really was at that time. And it resorted, I mean, look at the composition Seoul's running right now. I mean, they were so scared of, this is like the second point, right? Ruins was point 1, and they did the Widow versus Widow battle.
Though, right? That was, you saw in Asia?
They tried a lot of these comps, Bren, because they were just scared of the Widow. They couldn't get to the Widow. They weren't winning the Widow 1v1. And they just kind of, it was not good from Seoul Dynasty. And I mean, we still are in the same spot with this team. Sometimes they look like they can do it. Sometimes they can't. What's interesting is was this game? They brought in, because I believe there was a draw during this series. It's 3-0, but with a draw. After halftime, they bring in Michelle.
I did not get that at all, man. I was doing a VOD review of the game today, and if you had just covered up their names, wouldn't have even been able to tell.
They brought in Michelle why they did it. Toby.
Yeah.
I was like, we were so confused. I was like, we haven't seen Michelle in like weeks, and I was like, maybe they want to try and play some diva. Oh, he did. All right, but
it was only once this season.
Yeah,
but for the most part, it's been Marvel the whole season. Like. Yeah. But then I thought like, okay, maybe if you're going to play Michelle, you try something different. Like you don't want to play, maybe you want to play some Zarya, maybe you want to play some Diva. Yeah. And they just brought him in to play Sigma.
Nope. Yep, he just played Sigma full time the entire time on Volskaya.
I was like, isn't that the point that Marvel's the off tank because he's good at Sigma?
Then it made no sense to me. Michelle actually looked as good as Marvel did on the Sigma. I couldn't tell the difference between them. If you covered the names, would not have been able to tell that Michelle was subbed in.
That's what I was thinking after. I'm like, well, wait, if Michelle can play Sigma at this type of level, and then he can also play Diva and Zarya, why isn't he the off tank?
Yeah, I don't know.
One thing that was for certain, I think, and I heard you say this earlier on your stream as well, Josh, but I came to the same kind of conclusion from watching the finals, is that I think for the first time ever, Asia is behind in terms of the skill level compared to NA.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I absolutely 100%. Agree. Having watched the games recently, like a lot of the teams in Asia just didn't get it. And actually Seoul, like I was all right with how Seoul played, to be honest, because they had Prophet, and Prophet was playing okay. Fitz was getting boomed in the duel, but at the end of the day, like, what are you really supposed to do about that? And they had like some all right level of coordination. They played like a bad game of Gibraltar. Well, not even that bad, but they played like a not great game of Gibraltar against Shanghai, but Shanghai loved that map. And so outside of that, it's like, all right, you did okay, but you're not at the elite level.
I was so excited to cast the Asian games this weekend in the semis because I thought there would be some really good matchups. But then when I watched the games and I went back and I watched the games from NA, I kind of came away with the same thing. Like, this is like one of the first times I think we've seen the NA region play the meta better than what we saw in APAC. I think APAC was messy, just really messy. And I think what you see with Guangzhou is their ability to play the Genji Widow was basically the difference in the whole thing. Right?
It really was. Guangzhou were the only team.
The
only team that could play the meta properly, or that understood the meta properly, is more the better way of putting that.
And when I thought that the match with Shanghai and Guangzhou would be close, is when I casted Guangzhou, New York. Because I thought.
Let's hear.
What happened to New York?
You were molding about that, Matt.
You want to move on to Guangzhou, New York?
Yeah, Guangzhou, New York.
The series was just horrid. Oh my god!
Why was it so
What
bad?
happened?
To set the scene a little bit, though, New York had rolled the Spark in the previous day.
Yes.
So if you're coming in and you have only looked at the match results, you might think that New York are a good team. If you look at the New York Spark game, Spark are god awful right now. It's fucking appalling, like how badly they're playing. Right, honestly, like they are going through some like reverse honeymoon period, like when you ask your partner to marry you, and they just reveal all of these horrible secrets about themselves, and then it goes down the toilet immediately.
The Spark play like they're not even in voice. Like,
how is that even possible when you have acquired one of the best Genjis in the game?
Architect kind of shut the bed a couple of times in the match. The whole team just doesn't understand how to coordinate. They're split up all over the place, positioning dreadful. They don't get the meta, and they look like they're not common with each other.
Dude, you know what? You know what the saddest part with New York is like. The match goes on, and they're playing the first map. Okay, so this is just tragic. Guangzhou comes out with Ashe Genji and then Widow Genji on Ilios. New York is like hell bent on playing Orisa Sigma Tracer Genji.
Oh my god! We talked about this last week,
and they played it, Johnny. They played it on Ruins.
Yeah.
They played Orisa Sigma Tracer Genji on Ilios Ruins.
What are they doing?
How scared are you of the enemy Widowmaker if you don't play Widow on
I'm
Ruins?
not gonna lie.
It is happy.
I'm not gonna lie to you guys. How big is esports betting in China? Because there may be some match fixing going on.
No, shut up. Nah. Shut the fuck up.
So then, and I'm like, all right, this just doesn't make any sense. Like, they played Ashe like a little bit on the map. They were kind of like forced to make changes. And then we go to Blizzard World. Guangzhou's just like, fuck it, try and beat us with this. Like,
wait, sorry, Matt. Before we move on to Blizzard World, I just want to say, right, they let Happy fucking free farm, and Happy went 11-3 on the map, and then Eileen goes 13-2. So the DPS are just pounding the NYXL.
Yeah.
The NYXL DPS just can't do a thing. And bear in mind, that's against Haksal and Nene on Tracer Genji. Like, this comp just didn't work.
Wow.
Tracer Genji on is almost like even more confusing.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. So when we go to Blizzard World, Guangzhou's just like, well, okay, we're gonna play Genji Widow, and you guys just try and beat us. And New York, like, they come out with Haksal on Genji, and then they play Nene on like the Ashe and whatnot. And I just don't think they understand, like, Haksal is so aggressive, like almost like Sparkle levels of aggressive, and it works for Paris because they all kind of like move as a unit, right? New York just like, they're still just kind of like standing around, like Haxall's got his blade out and he's like, 20 feet ahead, and everybody's like just trudging along, like go make a play. And
it's gonna be a lot of upset New York fans listening to this. They always get upset with us, Matt. They always get upset with us.
What? I was thinking, do you think New York would have been better with Who Are You in the lineup instead of Haksal?
No, Haxall's Genji is sick. It's still sick. It's just I don't think they understood how to play around it.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Is this evidence that...
Yeah, but as a team.
Is this evidence that Genji doesn't need any buffs?
No.
Can I also just point out that Jonak went 1-8 on Blizzard World?
Really?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, we were going to get to that as well, but there was one fight on Blizzard World that really sticks out there on defense, and you know, like the final point, like when the cart's about to come around the corner, and then like the offensive team can either come out on the big ramp or like that little side room.
No.
But you can kind of go under the Blizzard World defense on last point. And there's like that little pathway on the right if you're coming from the defender spawn, or they can come from that main entrance. Have you guys ever seen Blizzard World?
Oh yeah. There's like a little wall. Yeah.
It's
like
right here. Yeah, to the right.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yes,
so this is actually the play. This is perfect. They end up using like look at the time. Guangzhou still has a ton of time left. They end up using Supercharger, Gravitic Flux, and Dragon Blade to try and wipe Guangzhou in that little tiny room. Haxal just does one dash with a halt. He didn't even need any other ults. He just goes right through everybody. And then the next fight, Guangzhou just comes back and ends up winning it. It just seemed like they just didn't understand how to play around his Genji. Like, because when you think about Haxal, like, and even Haxal and Who Are You compared to like Libero, like they're so aggressive in how they play.
Yeah, I mean, you can play aggressive as a Genji in this meta. You just need your team to support you. You need to be playing around the halts. You need to have the full support of them. Sometimes you need just the aggressive immortality fields.
It was just, and then on the last map, you can tell that they knew they didn't have a chance, because Hanamura starts and they don't even play Haxal on Genji, even on offense. They play Mei.
Oh, the Mei offense was tragic.
Mei Ash.
Yeah, because Mei Ash defense,
tragic.
I think, is pretty good on Hanamura. We saw the Shock win against Parrot with Mei Ash defense, and I think that's actually pretty decent. On attack, it was garbage.
Here's a question I was going to pose, where you brought it up earlier, Josh, with Jonak. Where do you rank Jonak in terms of flex supports right now?
I think he has really struggled to adapt his play over the course of this year. I've been watching way more of New York because I've been trying to figure out this reason of like, why did New York suck this year? They're getting worse and worse every year.
It's not a roster thing. They have all the talent in the world. Like they have if you were to look at all of these teams in the league, like just roster for roster and not see them play and just match them up on individual skill, they would be one of the top teams you would pick.
They'd probably be top 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not. It's not like 2018 where they're miles ahead of the competition.
No.
But they are up there.
But they should not be getting 3-0'd by the Guangzhou Charge. They should at least be putting up a fight.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that one of the main reasons in previous metas has been that Jonak just demands way too many resources and sits himself at the front line. But I don't think that really applies to this meta, because he's not. He's kind of sat at the back. He's trying to empower people. It's not like he's going for ridiculous Batiste plays all the time. But New York just don't take they don't take initiative. They don't try and make plays. Like Mano always is naturally quite a reactive player, and then they haven't been able to play around Haxal's, even like his Genji. They just weren't putting it in the best positions possible. I don't know.
This might be a super mega hot take, but I almost want to see Mandu get playtime over Animo.
I don't think it would have made a difference.
Is that gonna make a difference?
No, I mean, not short term. Like, it's not gonna make them great next week. But I think it's like a play style and team dynamic change, because I think Mandu's play style caters more to Haxal's play style, and as you implement more and more of those players into this team, I think that will help them get to the right place, if that makes sense.
I mean, but during this match, if you go back and look at some of the stats and numbers, like Shu on the Batiste was so much better than Jonak throughout the series. Obviously, his team is like rolling, but like final blows, damage, like he was like leading the team in a lot of those categories at times, like, and putting down like crazy like healing, like
Shu had a great game.
New York, I feel like they're at like a turning point, right? They're at like a crossroads. It's like they can either figure it out and kind of become one of the top 2 teams in Asia, or they can just kind of keep doing what they're doing. I think where my frustration and the frustration of probably their fans is that they see this roster and they know they can do it. Like, you know, these players are capable.
That is what is so humiliating to watch in real time, as great players turn into average players, right? And I'm not saying that New York Excelsior have average players. They're great players. But over time, we're witnessing this season some of those legacies that were built in season 1 and 2 get like teared down throughout the season, and we have to change how we're thinking about these players, which is hard to do because you have this like historical nostalgia attachment to some of these players that cannot adapt and like stay in touch with the game. And it's, you know, at the end of the season, we gotta ask ourselves, like, could New York upgrade on certain positions?
This may be a hot take, and on whatever, but would both teams be better off if Twilight had gone to New York and NYXL had gone to the Shock?
I don't think Twilight to New York helps their issues, though, because they would still be lacking. Like, what would they have to do at that point? Play with Who Are You, I think?
Yeah.
But I don't think
But you have, like, I think Twilight's probably a better Batiste than Jonak.
But I don't think Libero makes them change at all.
Oh, change? No. Well, I was thinking more like
it wouldn't make New York
Genji.
better.
I think you're trying to solve the issue of NYXL with the wrong tool, the wrong tools, you know?
I did appreciate the hot take, though, from Matt.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the system that they're in, right? Because the players are quite talented, and if they can't really adapt. But I think you're onto something as well, Johnny, when you're saying we need to rethink how where we should be placing these players. You know, I think this is the same issue that people had in season 1 with Miro, you know? Like, coming into it, do you remember when everyone, we all, like, ourselves included, at least with me, I don't want to talk for you guys, but everyone just considered Miro, you know, one of the best players, one of the best main tanks, one of the best Winstons. And
the thing, though, I agree with you. I agree with you, Bren. But the thing, though, we saw Miro suck. Yeah. Whereas some of these players, we don't really examine them as closely.
Yeah, well, I don't think we've been looking at it, right?
As we did with Miro.
We haven't been looking for it because we've just been expecting excellence for so long, right?
Yeah.
So we're not looking for the weaknesses. Anyway, does anybody have any final thoughts on this before we move on to Shanghai?
Not really. No.
Josh, would you accept $100,000 to fix NYXL?
Who is that directed to?
Can I keep my current job? Because if not, no. Would I accept an extra 100,000 to do some consulting for them? Yeah, hit me up.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
We should make a weekly segment where we fix a team and we all bring our own plan and then we compare plans to fix a team.
What, like the Dragon's Den, but with coaching a team?
I actually had that idea for a segment on my podcast I did last year called like, I don't know what, positive reinforcement or whatever. And then I was like, nah, I'll probably piss off like a coach or something. I don't want to do it.
Does the US have a Dragon's Den?
New York doesn't even. They don't even really need major fixing. They just
what's the show in America where you pitch business ideas?
It's Shark Tank.
That's
what it's called in America.
Okay, it's called a Dragon's Den in the UK.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about Shanghai. I want to talk about Shanghai here because I actually did watch the finals. And my God, I've never been so disappointed in all my life. I had this geared up as going to be a good match. And the amount of mistakes that Shanghai made were numerous. It was pretty disappointing to watch, I think, given that we know Shanghai is really capable of a lot more. And I looked at Fleder, and I've got to say that guy was not up to scratch.
Yeah, I want to kind of start at the most obvious outset here because they lose 4-2, and the two maps that Shanghai win are the two maps where Lip plays instead of DM. So my thought process coming into this match before I'd seen it, and I know that this was the thought process of a lot of people on Twitter as well, was surely Lip was better than DM. Surely they played, like, there must be some reason, right? It can't just be a coincidence. Well, it wasn't completely a coincidence because when Lip played, he played the Sombra, and they look a lot better when they play Sombra comps. But outside of that, it was a coincidence. DM fucking pounded, actually, and there's no way that they would have done better with Lip. There's just no way. There's no argument about it.
Those people probably did not watch Shanghai Seoul Dynasty where DM literally dominated the game. Yeah. Like on the Widowmaker.
The people
like
arguing this are the people who
they
probably didn't watch the match. They're probably just going off the scoreline on OverwatchLeague.com, you know?
But also, I do think that in the past, Lip does seem... Because in the past, there have been a lot of Ash been played instead of Widowmaker. There was a lot of Widowmaker in the series. But I think in the past, though, could have been an argument that like there's just some better dynamic when Lip is in the team. He maybe calls better, or there's just some kind of like outside thing. But I just don't see what he could add to the team that would have pushed him across the edge. They just didn't get it. They just didn't get it. It wasn't on DM at all.
Remind them to walk on the point, or.
Well, they did have some nasty C9s in this.
You watched a little bit of it today, Josh. I'm interested. What did you think of Fearless's performance?
His Orisa was
is shaky.
Yeah, I mean, his halts were all over the place, and his positioning is like he plays this like Shanghai style that's worked amazingly for them for the rest of the year, where Void goes off on like a flank or a high ground with Lee Jig-on, and they like dominate that high ground. And then Fearless takes an off angle, and like between the two of them, they control the space in between.
Hold up.
But
look, can I stop you there real quick?
Yeah, what's up?
How can your only two tanks take off angles? Who was holding down the middle?
Well, no, he's right. I mean, that's how they play. Like when
they play but they like the space in between. There's nobody there, but you ain't going there because you'll get melted if you do.
They're just so it's like shit in.
They take the best map positions possible with their tanks, and this is something that's made the Shanghai Dragons so amazing this year, and it's why they've been so dominant. Is because they always focus on positioning. But this meta isn't about getting your tanks in the best position. It's about brute forcing your way forward so that your Genji has the space. And they just aren't doing that. Like Fled just stood there like, well, I guess I'll just kind of hang out at the back with my Dragon Blade.
and they didn't maybe like, okay, so this is probably why they looked really good against Seoul, because they played that type of play style. Like what we saw them do a lot against Seoul Dynasty was like Fearless would kind of just like play pretty safe, like by the point or like objective on Orisa, and then they would push Lee Jae-gon over on an off angle with Void, maybe even with Izayaki as well, just trying to get Void in position in off angles to like really just kind of put down a lot of poke damage, and then they opened up a lot of space for DM. But they never really showed you a look where like, okay, we're just going to use Fleta on Genji and just batter through you. And Eileen just puts so much pressure that like you kind of have to respect it. Like, and I mean, Guangzhou just, I mean, I was not high. I mean, I was high on Guangzhou, but I didn't really think they were as like good as probably for you guys. That's true. I think and this definitely proved it for me. I mean, they're sick.
I think about Shanghai as well, and I think we saw so many times like teams would be inconsistent day to day or match to match, because playing Genji in this meta is almost like doing trust falls with your teammates. We're just like, you need to go aggressive and just trust your team that the immortality field will be there, or that the Brig armor pack will be there, or like whatever to back you up. Because I thought the same thing a little bit. You know, and I didn't get the chance to watch all of the Seoul Shanghai game because we don't have time like before watch point to wake up in the morning and watch all matches. But it felt like Prophet was way more aggressive in their first match against London than he was against Shanghai. And I think a bit of that is just like you need full confidence that you're going to be backed up. But versus the lower teams, you're like, well, I can get away with it because they suck. Where it's like, no, you need to get away with it against the top teams to be good in this meta. And so it's almost like the same with Fleta, where it's like he felt so hesitant because I don't know if he didn't have that trust or whatever in his teammates to like back him up. But it's just playing scared. It
just seemed like they were always on the back foot. At Guangzhou was the team setting the pace, and it didn't really have an opportunity. Like,
fair.
Like, you mentioned with the Seoul Shanghai series, like Prophet was never able to be aggressive in that one because they were always down a player. Fitz was always dead. I mean, he was always dead. So there's no way you can play that aggressive when your Widowmaker's just dead at the beginning of every fight. But I think what you saw with Paris as well, and what worked for Guangzhou, is when they dictated the pace of the game. The other team's Genji can't really do anything when you're going crazy on their backline and going in. Like, you're just kind of helping as much as you can and hoping they live, and then it's your turn. Where that's why you see teams kind of resort to the Mei at that point, because the other team is just pounding them so hard with aggression that they know they can't get any value out of Genji.
And that's why Fusion were so sick. because Fury managed to shut down Sparkle. That was another thing I didn't get to say earlier. Like, I keep moving away from the topics. I'm really sorry, Kurt. But that was another thing I wanted to say before when we talked about NA, is I think this meta really showcased like who the best Sigmas were, because you're not always like relying on your teammates' halt to like get up there and like you pull up the teammates or like the opponents and then you accretion into the halt, like whatever, you know, it's like Sigma basics, you get a good flux. This meta, playing Sigma, just ups the skill level to like 1,000, and Fury stepped up, Krong stepped up. You really saw like the Sigmas that stood out, where they had like accretions that were just out of this world, and you really saw who the top Sigmas was.
Krong had a sick tournament.
It's not even a rookie. That's the crazy thing, dude. What?
Do you know Krong's a rookie?
Bro, I am not. Listen, people are gonna give me shit for this, but I could have swore that they added him like in stage 4 or something last year. Like maybe I like peered into the DMT multi-universe in one of my dreams, and like I don't know, the streams got crossed over or something while I was sleeping. But I could have swore that he whatever, man. Okay, I'm wrong. Apparently it's a meme now as well. People keep spamming, "Oh, Krong, is he a rookie?" You're not funny, okay?
My favorite is whenever Josh comes on YouTube, like the screen, everyone just spams eggs. Like,
it's crazy. I occasionally go back onto the YouTube channel while I'm casting in order to like look at a replay of something we already watched to figure out like what did just happen there. And every time I get distracted by the fucking egg emojis, because every time I cast this, just spam, just like walls of egg emojis everywhere.
You should actually, no, that's a dumb idea. Well, maybe.
No, Bren, what were you going to say?
Go on your head, just see the YouTube chat go wild.
yeah, that'll ruin my makeup for an entire cast, and I'll sting an egg.
You know, if you covered in egg. So Shanghai, do we think? So we made the argument that for the NA teams, we said, do we think that some of these teams are going to be able to keep it going? With Guangzhou, I don't have doubts in my mind. I think with this team,
neither do I.
That going forwards, they're just going to remain a top team.
Because they were making slow improvements anyway.
Yeah.
And I also think that
team forever.
Yes, for quite a long time. Yeah.
Honestly, though, does it talk about how tragic the Asia region is? Looking at some of these teams,
it's just the fact that they're not seeing good results.
It's got worse. This meta. It's got worse.
Yeah, it's gotten
it
worse.
was good, and now it's gotten worse. Yeah, they've kind of lost their way, some of these teams, especially New York and Spark, because London have made improvements. They've actually gotten better.
Yeah.
But Chengdu are Chengdu, just fucking, write them off. But it's Spark and New York that have looked the most tragic. But Guangzhou have made, you know what? As well, Nero going for his visa interview and having to leave the country has been the best thing possible for Eileen's career. Eileen has been able to showcase that he's not just a feast or famine Genji Widow 2 trick and like Doomfist as well. I guess he's a 3 trick, but he actually has been able to pick up the Tracer and look really intelligent playing that. He's looked hyper intelligent playing the Genji, whereas when he played it in Chinese Contenders, you could have dressed him up as Jinmu. I swear to God, the guy played very similar kind of style where he just inted constantly, and he didn't play anything like that. He played more like EQO. He was like super intelligent on the flank, guarding people, going in and punishing the opponents. It was so good.
You made that joke. I was gonna literally say, I was like, if Seoul had the Brittle Maker on the roster for the Shanghai match, they would have put him in. They would have tried it out. I mean, you put in Michelle and Toby at the halftime. You would have put the Brittle Maker in as well.
That's all I'm saying. It would have been different. You guys want to move on to a post bracket review? Where we review
wait a second. Can we pull up the VOD? Kurt, I've got a task for you here. Can we pull up the VOD of Shanghai Dragons Point A defense on Gibraltar? It's Shanghai Dragons versus the Guangzhou Charge, and it's Gibraltar, and they're running McCree Soldier, Winston Sigma, Anna Zen. And I have no idea what they were doing. Not a clue. Not one clue.
I feel bad for the players because there's not one player who's like GM, like Overwatch League level, who hears that comp and is like, yeah, we're gonna win. They're like, what the fuck? We're just doing what we're told.
That's kind of wild though. Like, why would they even go to that conclusion of running that comp? Like, what is the deterrent
context
for what?
was
What are they? Why are they running that? What are they trying to deter?
Guangzhou were running double shield. They were running double shield Genji Widow, which isn't good on Gibraltar anyway, and is the main reason why they ended up losing on Gibraltar.
Yeah.
But the Asia meta has become.
Wait, no, this is the start, right?
But this is what Shanghai ran when they were on attack, and this has become the Asia meta.
This is what they did in the Seoul game.
It's Echo, right? Yeah, Echo Sombra.
Yeah, it's Echo Sombra,
Sombra,
and then it's the Anna and Brig. He's eventually going to swap over to Brig here. And that's the classic, that's what the Asia meta has become on Gibraltar, which I think is because it like tries to get loads of hacks on the Genji and the Diva if you try and play Genji dive against it. I'm not totally sure though.
I imagine it's pretty easy to blow someone
if you
up.
skip forwards halfway through the VOD until the Shanghai Dragons are on defense, you'll see an impossible to explain composition.
Well, okay, let me try and decipher.
No, it's quite easy to explain. Because then the context is that they just wanted to try to counter that because they expected Guangzhou to play Echo Sombra.
Oh, back a bit. You have to go to the beginning of this half. Further back. Give it like 10 minutes back. I'm
10 minutes?
It's not 10 minutes back.
That was all the series.
Here it
is. Here it is. What are you saying? This is
expected Echo Sombra, and they can play Anna Sen on the high ground behind them, and they have a Winston to poke away if they swap to a Widowmaker. I don't know what the Sigma is trying to do, but it seems obvious to me that they just expected Echo Sombra, and they're taking 2-hit scans because you can't dive both.
But what about if you just run Genji dive against this? Like, what doesn't Genji Sombra dive just destroy this?
Or couldn't you have played like Ashe?
I'm going to be real with you. This comp is so batshit that, you know when you have those games in comp where you look at your comp and you're like, there's no way we're fucking winning this. You've got like a Wrecking Ball, Hog, Genji, I don't know. Somehow there's a Baptiste in the DPS slot.
Like, we're going to lose, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, we're going to lose. And then it just dominates for reasons unknown to the human mind. This could have been one of those moments where Shanghai's in scrims. Fearless is annoyed because he's gone to the local flower shop and he's been turned down by some woman he's trying to court, and they just throw this comp out and they see what works. I mean,
you want to defend it, Johnny?
Sorry. I didn't want to interrupt Bren because he had like a really good story going, and I felt bad because I tried to interrupt him, and so I apologize.
Well, what's the actual genuine reason?
The flower shop thingy was funny. I'm sorry.
What's the genuine reason that you think?
The point I wanted to make was that that point A defense looked extra bad for Shanghai because when the Widowmaker came out, the Soldier and McCree couldn't play like they originally planned, right?
Yeah.
So it completely just messed up what they had originally planned. So it looks extra bad because the Widow countered the McCree and Soldier. And like, I don't understand why you would play McCree and Soldier, because every team will pick Widow in that instance because it just counters both of them. But if Guangzhou had played the Echo Sombra, that point A defense would have looked a lot different because the McCree and Soldier. Why are words so hard, dude? You get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying?
We get what you're saying. We get what you're saying. Look, it's a long episode. It's late. We get it.
Anyway, are we done with Shanghai here?
Yeah, I would also say to kind of counter Johnny's point completely, though, is like with the team having the offensive spawn, like who would have committed to just ramming their face with Echo Sombra into that over and over again?
With the APAC region, who knows?
They would have. I mean, you would have think they would have rounded the corner and been like, "Oh wow, that's kind of dumb. Let's round back to the corner and go switch."
Yeah,
but you never know.
Let's do the bracket review where we go over everybody's bracket. We're gonna go over what we did wrong, huh? Because let's do me first, apparently. Okay.
Does it say points? 28, right?
Does it say 28
points?
Yeah, it says 28 points at the top right.
28 points because I predicted that Philly would be...
how the hell did you get 28 points from this?
So I predicted that Paris beat Dallas.
Yeah.
Predicted all the first rounds wrong. Predicted that Shock would win their quarters game. Predicted that Philly would win their quarters game. And accidentally predicted Paris on the wrong side of the table.
And Asia. Asia is the points.
Oh, yeah, Asia as well.
Of course.
But yeah, that's
There it is.
Oh, they did pretty good with the
that's the
Asia
one.
Yeah. All according to Kakaku. That
Yeah,
means plan in
mine
Japanese.
that Curdle show doesn't have the points, but I pulled mine up. I searched for it, and I have my points.
You can just, Kurt, I think if you go up, scroll up on the bracket, and it says look up bracket, you just type in Mr.X.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, that's how it works.
There you go.
Hey,
Wait, there's
22.
22.
You made
Look at
two
how-
different
dude,
ones.
You made
look at
two
how good I
brackets?
was. They're the same. They're the same. Look how good I was in Asia for the start, and then I fell apart. I mean, I was running away with it. Don't look at my NA one though. Holy shit!
I mean, your NA one is just
Atlanta in the
goodness
semis.
gracious me.
Atlanta in the semis.
Atlanta in the semis.
Florida in the
Gladiators,
semis.
Florida.
Bro, even worse, I think they had fucking gladiators in the semis, dude.
No, you didn't. Go to
Yeah, you did. You did.
I think I did because I thought they would be playing against Atlanta, and I didn't trust either of those teams.
Oh,
Sideshow
no.
game and pull it up. I
Who
want
had
to
the
see
most
it.
points out of the four of us? Do we not know? We'll find out. I guess.
We'll find out,
The
yeah.
gladiators.
Oh my God,
Wow.
Josh! 3 greens.
And you had Paris in the wrong side of the bracket as well. That's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
What? I don't get any points for Paris going to the final.
How many points is this?
That's
And
brutal.
like, what is his
it
Asia
doesn't say.
bracket?
Points.
Did you not get any points?
No, the Asia bracket he had.
You had no
the same one as
points?
us.
No, he must have got some. I don't know. It's weird.
I don't know. I don't fucking
Why
know.
was there no points?
Sideshow can see it probably.
No, I did all right in the Asia bracket. I don't know how many points I got. I don't know really how the points are added up.
It's 2
Did you
points.
not? It
per
doesn't look like
correct.
you had your. I tried to look up your Twitter username, but it didn't.
Oh
show
yeah,
up.
I didn't link it to my Twitter because I thought that it would
Oh my
tweet it
God.
automatically.
Unbelievable, dude.
That's a forfeit. That's a forfeit right there.
How many points do you get for each one? Let's see.
It's 2
must get-
points per
it's like-
correct, I think.
But it must be
The-
2 and then
Complicated. Very complicated.
two points for the right team and then 1 point for the right winner, right? So it's like
Oh, did I
I
get the
don't know.
most amount of points?
Wait,
maybe yeah.
This is mine?
Did I
Yeah, you
win?
had 22 as well.
Oh my
Josh had to
God.
have less than 22. I mean,
It's an absolute travesty that we don't get the points for Paris going to the final just because we had them on the wrong side of the bracket.
Wow.
yeah, he's just trying to
win?
make this argument so people show up to his next VOD review.
I
you know,
win the bracket builder?
Dude,
Wow.
unbelievable. Bren, who's eating for half of the episodes,
Never watched an Overwatch League game in his life.
barely watches
69%
the league.
prediction rate.
Krong's second year has the best prediction rate of anybody. Unbelievable.
In hindsight, I'm the most disappointed by the Valiant.
Really?
I thought that they legitimately could be a fantastic team
Well-
with KSP and Shax and rotate in KSF with the Genji, and instead they showed up with a Ply who hasn't played Brig for like almost a year,
Yeah,
and Gig on the Ori instead of Dreamer. And I'm not blaming those two players. I'm not blaming those two players because obviously, as we saw in the Twitter, like the tweets, there is something going on and it doesn't look like it's anyone's fault. It just kind of happens. Like something's going on. I don't know what it is. I don't have the juice like Avast and Linkser. But, you know, it's unfortunate because I think that they truly had fantastic potential to become good at this meta, but it just turned into pancake from the get-go for reasons that we'll never know. We didn't even get to see them play their best. They just...
Yeah.
I think it kind of would have been pancake anyway, because in my opinion,
Well, yeah, because they were pretty set on the Tracer Ash meta.
very set on the Tracer.
Yeah.
So were Houston, Florida Mayhem, Atlanta Rain,
Yeah, they all were kind of poo, Johnny.
but they
were all
made it
kind of poo.
further.
Florida didn't.
And the KSF with the Genji. I had legitimately like.
I have a proposition for you, boys.
I
I
don't
am-
think
I
that
am
team
just-
would have done well.
Do you think they're worse than all those teams? I'm legitimately upset by this take of yours.
I think they would have done worse than Toronto. Yeah.
Do you think they would have done worse than the Houston Outlaws? With Lastro and Dreamer in the team.
I think they would have been pretty. I mean, what was their bracket? Who were they playing against?
They
might
were
have gone
playing
further
as
with their
Toronto
bracket.
Defiant, and
No,
then
I still think they would have lost to
Atlanta Rain.
Toronto. I think they
with
would have just
Lastro
still
and
lo-
Dreamer.
Yeah, I think they would have still lost to Toronto. They didn't have a grip on what they wanted to play. They didn't sub KSF in. They didn't look like they wanted to play a lot of Genji.
They did play some
Yeah,
KSF.
like Yeah, like a little bit, and they looked bad when they played with him as well. They need Shax to pop off and drop like the best Tracer performance.
They had a Ply on Brig.
It didn't make any difference, man.
I'm sorry.
Let's leave it for the head-to-head.
I am enraged.
Head-to-head topic. We'll get one out soon. You can battle it out. I have a proposition. As next week is a dead week, you want to move the power ranking to then?
Yeah, let's do a big power rankings show.
Oh my god.
You want to do a power ranking show?
Yes, it's going to be so bad.
Hype the people up. Get gassed up, people. Get sicko mode. I saw a couple of people were really annoyed. I kept saying sicko mode in my cast. It's just going to make me say it more.
There were like 2 bottom comments on Reddit. Why are you browsing the negative comments on Reddit?
So it's tweets as well. But outside of that, I beat myself up a lot, Johnny. I have internal mental issues that I'm dealing with. This feeling like
all you should do is just tweet out like, "Oh man, I casted really good," and then everyone will tweet you and say all nice things.
No, you should just tweet that you're doing bad. And then
I need to. What I need to do is I need to pity farm compliments, basically, and then that equals job security as well. So
I tweeted out that I'm pretty happy with like how I've done this season, and I bet some people at home are like, "Fuck Johnny, he's too proud of himself. He thinks too highly of himself. Screw that guy. Can't be happy about it."
I mean, they're right.
I'm going to my final segment.
Those people.
Going to the final segment. Right. You can't stop me. Shut up, everybody. Roll the tape.
Hey, howdy there, partner. Welcome to the Bren Player of the Week. Presented by T-Mobile.
So there you go. There's my T-Mobile Player of the Week. We're going to be handing it this week over to one player I think deserves it quite a bit. His name is Fielder. He played at 4 o'clock in the morning. This boy, we need to throw him a Plat chat party presented by T-Mobile because he look at him. He's just so sad. You know, his team get to celebrate the win. He has to break his sleeping schedule. Now, admittedly, he is in Korea. It's pretty. You can actually live pretty normally, I'd say. Actually, no, that's a lie. But I mean, 7-Eleven's open pretty late in Korea. I found out. It's open up all the time. Actually, you can. Anyway,
isn't 7-Eleven like the only store that's named after its opening hours? It's ridiculous for a 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven is named 7-Eleven because it's open from 7 until 11.
Maybe
so
originally.
The fact that there are 24-hour ones is silly.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, the point is Fielder played a marathon of games. He played some of the longest series that we've had in the Overwatch League's history, back to back, in a different time zone, on 200 ping, and he still walked away with the dub. Can we throw him a party of some kind? Can we get some T-Mobile mugs sent his way or something? What can we do for him?
Well, I mean, you have them. You could always send him one.
Fielder, if you're watching, I don't know why you would be watching, but listen, I'm gonna at the end of this year, I'm gonna come out to Korea, and I'm gonna take you out to all the spots that I discovered. I know you've been living in Korea longer, but I've found a couple of spots. There's this bar called Macaroni Funky Club in I think Dagon. It's absolutely incredible. It's really quite small, but really dope.
I'm sure Fielder's really excited to go there with you.
Dude, we can celebrate your big win. Don't worry. Don't listen to Matt.
I saw some people on Twitter making up a new nickname for Fielder, which I think works incredibly well. I actually love it. The Ping King. I think that's so good. It's like the opposite of the Kingpin, but it's like the Ping King. It's so fucking incredible. Because the guy I've never seen a dude perform like he does on 200 ping. He's hitting ridiculous sleep darts all over the place.
I would have never because the correlation between the name and where it came from.
What's Kingpin?
Yeah. We call you bitch tits because do you want me to explain that one for you as well, Matt?
No, I don't think T-Mobile will like that. We're getting paid for frick's sake.
I think that's a great name for him though, because I can't think of a single player that I've seen perform that well on 200 ping. I've never seen it before.
Yeah, it's absurd how he performs at a high level.
Well, I think it's the ping, but also the time zone. Like, I don't think people realize the time difference as well.
But this week was so
8 a.m.
This week was so difficult to find my player of the match or player of the week even because there were so many good choices. I mean, Neptuno was just spouting off hot fire on Twitter the entire week long. I mean, I could have given it to Soon for typing "sit" at Carpe in the map that he got fielded in.
That was
throwing
pretty
back
sick,
the trash
actually.
talk. There was a lot of probably some more opportunities that I'm forgetting, but I felt like it was a serious weekend. Fielder played incredibly well with just everything going against him, and he needs the award. I mean, he's already been getting recognition for it outside of it, but of course, there's no higher recognition than Bren's Player of the Week presented by T-Mobile.
That, like, he's still got his headset on, and everybody else is like celebrating. He's just sat there at 8 o'clock in the morning, completely drained. Like, am I done yet? Like, is that it? Like, I felt bad for the guy.
Dude, send some Twitch primes over to his. Yeah. I caught myself there because I was like, wait, are we broadcasting on YouTube on the Overwatch League right now? I was about to say Twitch Prime, and I was like, I had to catch myself, but then my brain was like, no, actually, I can say whatever I want.
Could you imagine if they aired Plat Chat on the Overwatch League YouTube?
I mean, it wouldn't be Plat Chat at that point, though, would it?
8 minutes of an episode, and then it would just go dark.
Yeah, I mean, this picture is just sums it up, doesn't it?
He looks exhausted.
Yeah,
he
poor
does.
guy.
Was his camera stuck?
What do you mean?
I don't know.
I mean, like, you know how sometimes, what is it called? Like a TiVo face or something, where you pause the screen and someone's like, just as they're about to speak? Or, so like, was his camera frozen, or was he just so tired that he's just making a very gormless face? Just like pure tiredness.
That was brutal too, seeing the Philly players' cams as well.
Bro, oh my god.
Those guys were so crushed.
We've already, what? Oh, video? Maybe we get a video, actually. You'll be able to see. We're pulling it up. But, I mean.
Here it is. Oh my god.
Okay, well, there's Fielder. Yeah, I think they just took the picture at an inopportune time.
Fury they did. Fury just kind of flips the cam. Like,
dude, yeah, that is brutal. Fury just. I mean, this is a team that is. Philly. How many times did they come close? And it's heartbreaking. It's actually heartbreaking. Anyway,
they've got many more opportunities, though. I think they should fire them up. They've got at least 2 opportunities.
Yeah, they have at least 2. But I thought we're going on. This episode is going on forever. But I thought this during the final that I wanted, and I'm not biased towards either team, but I wanted Philly to win this because in my mind it would have been EQO's redemption. And we know that Paris Eternal will be fantastic moving on. Like, I could see Paris Eternal next year being like a top 2 or top 3 team. They have that potential to develop into like a great team. But for some of the players on like Fusion, I'm like, at some point, time runs out. And I really wanted this to be EQO's tournament, and then Paris can go on and do Paris things for like the next 2 years.
I think Philly still has a lot of time though. I do. But I believe like Funny Astro, Alarm, like newer players. What do you say, Bren?
I think Johnny's got a great point about it, just on the basis that the Philly fans are kind of brutal, and like a lot of them were calling like, "Why is EQO even in this roster?" This is also
he's gone through some shit.
This is incredible as well because this is the same roster that has Chipser just sitting on the bench soaking up that Comcast money. So I mean, I don't know really what argument they're pushing for, but this was in a lot of ways EQO's redemption of him coming into this lineup again, this veteran DPS duo. Like in the cast, I said it. I mean, after his clutch play, but this was the reason he is on this starting roster. This is the reason why he's on this roster, is because he has that presence. He was always a very mechanically skilled player, and we hadn't seen him for a while. But he turns up, and he's the player that Philly needed. Unfortunately, not enough to win it in the end.
Yeah, I think it'll just be even more special when you see Philly actually get their win, right? Like, I think they're so talented of a team that one of these tournaments or playoffs will shake a meta out their way that they'll be able to get one. Like, I think there's just too much talent on the team for them not to.
They got to be the shock at some point.
Yeah, I don't know, Matt. Like, I love like your.
It could not be this year. It couldn't be this year.
Optimism.
Time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your optimism. But I can't help but to think the other way. It's like these moments, these opportunities only present themselves like 1 or 2 times. And you better freaking win it. Otherwise, you won't get another chance.
Honestly, though, Overwatch is such an up and down game in terms of metas. You literally get one that's good for your 2 weeks. and you can get one. I mean,
let me provide you a bit of wisdom from my 24 years of living. Okay. I've never been in a grand final scenario. I've never been in a match where there's massive stakes on the line. But one thing I've learned is that if obstacles come in your way and hardships and trials and tribulations and you don't overcome it for whatever reason, the worst thing you can do is sit here, mope, and think, well, that's that. The best thing you can do is take the losses in your stride and build to be a better person off the back of it. So I think Philly, as long as they don't get in their heads about them being, a NYXL version 2 of choking in finals, as long as they don't get into their heads about it, as long as they keep improving, as long as they keep working and using the losses to fuel them forwards and forge them into fucking warlords of the gaming server, then they'll be fine.
Oh my god. I'm really sorry, Bren, but for the first 20 or 30 seconds of that statement, I thought you were gonna transition into a T-Mobile ad.
No, bro. This is my head coach application.
In your way, my wisdom tells you that obstacles, just use 5G from T-Mobile.
Yeah, I mean, as good as the 5G and as fast as it is and as how far it does cover, Johnny, some things technology cannot solve, and that's a broken heart, although T-Mobile does come close.
Did you learn all of that wisdom when you lose the first half dominantly in a Valorant game?
I mean, any game in Valorant is winnable, but just over the course of my life, I feel like I've lived 10 lifetimes. The other week, or recently, I had a dream, and I took some melatonin to get to sleep, and melatonin gives me very vivid dreams. I've already told Josh about this dream, but I guess we'll finish this segment here. I raised a child and had another life in another dream. I kid you not. You know that scene in Rick and Morty where the guy plugs on the headset and lives another life, and he opens up a carpet store and he lives like a full life. I lived a good 7 months in my dream where I accidentally got somebody pregnant and I had a kid and I ended up raising a kid. I just stuck it. I was like, listen, can't change it now. I've done what I've done, but I gotta stick by my kid, which I'm quite pleased with in my subconscious, because there's always that aching fear at the back of your mind that you are going to be a piece of shit and just abandon a child if you do have one accidentally. At least with me, that's a crippling anxiety that I've got deep down.
I love your lack of awareness of how long a child takes to develop, that you think that could all happen in 7 months.
No. What happened was I got someone pregnant, and then they came to me when the child was already born.
Oh,
and then I lived out a life of 7 months when the child was roughly born and saw it develop as well. And it was really interesting. And the crazy thing as well about this dream is it triggered what I can only imagine is that the father paternal chemicals in your brain that only get activated when you have a child were turned on in my brain when I was sleeping. So when I woke up, there was an immense sense of loss in my life. There was an immense sense of loss in my life. But luckily, dreams, your brain just kind of forgets it. But yeah, what a wild dream that was.
Dreams, your brains just kind of forget it after he recites 30 minutes of a dream he just had.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to forget that, but yeah.
What a week.
What a week. Yeah. Come to a lot of conclusions, Top teams, who knows where they are. Me, I could be a father. Yeah, I don't know where else to go with it. I mean, is it time to end it?